I think the most important thing for your root system to have to make your plant grow vigorously is you need oxygen and you need microbes. See, you want to form an even canopy. If you have a Christmas tree, you have, the lower bud sites that could be getting the light. They're not getting the light. They're being covered up, so they're going to become airy like popcorn buds. As far as nutrients, I do start off with the recharge, by real growers, and oh my God. If anyone's been following the Skittles Autoflower, she like exploded. She's got a trunk almost like my arm. When you micromanage, you are gonna overwater because you feel like you need to do something, and that's where people screw up.
What's up, everybody? For you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and this is Garden Talk, episode 10. In this episode, I talk with a grower who goes by the name 420 Scene. He is a fellow YouTuber that has almost 12,000 subscribers. He has been gardening for over 7 years, and he specializes in growing autoflower plants. In this episode, we talk about autoflower plants. I try to dig deep and find out exactly what he does when he's growing autoflowers. We also talk a little bit about Aerated Compost Teas, because he does have experience with those as well. Click that thumbs up button if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already as well. I release these Garden Talk videos once a week, every Saturday. And then of course, after the episode, drop a comment down in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you do when you grow autoflower plants. And also, what do you do for aerated teas? Drop that down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let's just get right into it. All right, 420 Scene, welcome to Garden Talk. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good, man.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Glad to be on, man.
Let's just get right into things. So for those that don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into growing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 420 Scene, as a lot of you guys know. I started back in 2014. It's funny, like I still I still remember, like, I was in electrical school, right? And before class I was just like looking up like the different, lights and how to grow and that sort of thing. And like it was so intimidating. Like at first when I first started growing, there was so much like information out there that it was just so crazy. There's all these different forums out there, and all the different resources, YouTube, you know what I'm saying? So there's like so much, not opinions, and what's now, like what's good information, what's bad information. So like when I started out, it was I thought it was going to be like really really tough, you know what I'm saying? And um I remember before I actually got into growing, I started to actually started taking notes about like everything, like every, light cycles and NPK ratios and just like all that stuff, you know what I mean? And, one thing led to another. And, the thing about horticulture that I learned is it's like you got to practice to get better. Like you can get all the information you get, but like you can read every forum, everything out there. But if you don't, you know what I mean? If you don't practice your craft, you're never going to get better. That's what I try to tell everybody, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so many people that would just read books, read forums, and they have knowledge, and they'll be on the forums replying, giving answers, yet they haven't grown the plant. And
Yeah,
it's
right?
sad. It's sad that it's like that for some things, but yeah, doing your research is one thing. Executing and getting the experience is
Exactly.
certainly another thing.
Absolutely.
So now you're at the point now where you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
When did you launch the YouTube channel, and what type of videos do you do? And I think you're at what, a little over, was it 12,000 or 15,000 subscribers now? Or
We actually just grazed past 11,000 subscribers. And, I actually started out as Kush Life. A lot of like longtime OGs of the channel will know. We started at it with Kush Life. And see, my channel is a little bit different from a lot of the other, horticulture YouTubers. And I almost have like a really chill Xcode A kind of vibe. I do like grow videos. I do like stoner life stories, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I try to mix it up. I do news, within the horticulture community. So like a lot of people like that. So I do a little bit. I have a variety of a little bit of everything. You know what I mean?
yeah, you do those sit down videos where you sit down, press record button on the camera, and just fire away talking. And a
Absolutely.
little bit of an inspiration for me, actually. I want to do more of those types of videos and the way you execute them.
I
You know,
also
the,
do, I also have grow vlog series, and pretty much, I talk about each day. I have like time lapses, and I try to make it like really cool and fun for everybody.
Yeah, there's
But
definitely a lot of good stuff on your
I
channel.
spread out like my tips from my grow vlogs. You know what I mean? Because YouTube doesn't like us very much. So, you know what I
They
mean?
hate us. They hate us.
Oh yeah.
For those watching and not familiar with 420 Scenes channel, I'll have that linked down in the description section below. All right, let's get into the topics today. So today we're going to talk about autoflowers, and we'll also talk about compost teas. So let's start off by talking about autoflowers. What medium do you usually grow autoflowers in?
I was actually experimenting with a lot of different stuff, and I'm a huge Fox Farm guy. Everybody knows Fox Farm, Fox Farm. You know what I mean? What I like to do is, because I do transplant the autoflowers. I know a lot of people are weird about that, but what I do is I start them off in Happy Frog because it's pretty light soil. It's kind of like Fox Farm's Light Warrior. And when I do transplant, I like to have the bottom, like the bottom half portion of strawberry fields, with some perlite, because strawberry fields does not really have the best drainage. However, I mean, it's really good for flowering. And the top layer of the soil, I have Happy Frog, and sometimes I'll mix in Ocean Forest with Happy Frog, because Ocean Forest has, like bat guano, which is, pretty important for the veg stage. So like my logic behind that is, okay, when I transplant, they're going to have to go through the veg stage and all that, but they're not going to be in the veg stage for that long because they are autoflowers. So, by the time they start flowering, the roots will already hit the bottom half, which will be the strawberry fields. So that's kind of my thinking behind it.
Got it. And so do you start in like a solo cup, and then what container size do you transplant into?
I go from a solo cup to like a 7 or a 10 gallon pot.
Okay. And then are you using plastic pots, fabric pots? What do you
I use
prefer?
smart pots. I think they're great for aeration. You don't have to worry about your plant getting root bound. It's just, just kind of start kind
Do
of
you,
spinning around.
you were cutting out a little bit. Did you say smart pots?
Yes, smart pots.
And then what do you use for nutrients when you're feeding autoflowers?
As far as nutrients, I do start off with the recharge, by Real Growers, and oh my God. If anyone's been following the Skittles autoflower, she like exploded, you know what I mean? Like she's got a trunk almost like my arm, you know what I mean? It's pretty crazy. So I start off with recharge like during the veg stage, and then I give it some compost tea. Once in a while, I'll throw in some of ILGM's flowering, bud booster nutrients. So I think it's got a 0.2727 NPK ratio, so that's excellent for flower.
Got it. So do you use Fox Farm Trio as well, or no?
You know, I actually used to use the entire Dirty Dozen and the Trio.
Hmm.
No more. I found that it didn't really help me out too much, but I do like the Beastie Blooms. I think the NPK ratio is like 0.56 or something like that, straight up phosphorus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I used to use Beastie Blooms. I think it was what weeks, like 3, 4, and 5 a flower. I think, and that just
Yeah,
helps
yeah,
out tremendously because particularly using Fox Farm Trio, I used to get a lot of phosphorus deficiency mid flowering, and using that PK booster, the Beastie Blooms helps out so much, so much. So
yeah.
if anybody's using the Fox Farm Trio out there and are facing phosphorus deficiency in flowering, you might want to try Beastie Blooms because that solved my problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you use any sugars or microbial inoculants? I know you said you use Recharge, which has microbes in it. Do you use anything else beyond that for microbial inoculants?
I would say I use the organic blackstrap unsulfured molasses. I use plantation or grandma's. Those are the two that I think are pretty good. I also use honey during the veg stage. I know a lot of people have been asking me on my channel, oh, do you have any kind of pest issues? Because honey's sweet. Could that draw, like, have issues with bugs and sort of that sort of thing? And no. And the reason I like using honey is because it is an excellent root stimulant, and the growth and development of your roots are like super important in the veg stage. Like, I feel like the roots is something that people don't really like, especially a lot of newer growers out there. they think what's important are the leaves and what they see, but like how they feed, the root system, that's the most important thing right there.
For sure. So when do you usually apply honey or molasses, and what dosage do you usually do?
The honey, I do 1 tablespoon per gallon, and the molasses, I do about 2 tablespoons per gallon. And the honey, I use like maybe week 3 to week 5, or until, whenever they start flowering it in. And then molasses, like I said, 2 tablespoons per gallon. And most of the flowering stage, up until maybe week 6, after that, I kind of just cut it off. And I apply those every 2 weeks or so.
Got it. Now, when you say week 6, are you talking about veg or flower?
Like when I cut it off,
Yeah.
flour. I'm talking about the
Okay.
molasses. Usually.
Molasses. Okay, so molasses you're only doing in flour.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Sometimes I will give it its first dose of molasses like when I start seeing like pre-flowers.
Nice. Okay, so in regards to feeding autoflowers and comparing them with photoperiods, some people do treat autoflowers differently than photoperiods when it comes to feeding. Do you treat autoflowers differently when it comes
When
to
it comes
feeding?
when it comes to feeding, no, I treat it pretty much the same. Unless I want to veg longer, then the only difference is I'm just gonna keep giving it like honey. I mean, that's pretty much it. But I pretty much keep it the same as far as the feeding.
And I know that you also do training on autoflowers. So, for example, that Skittles that you're growing right now, you have done some training to it,
Yeah.
tons of tops throughout it. So, what do you? So,
Which
I
you
assume you'd like to maximize yield. What do
Oh
you
yeah.
typically do for training autoflowers in order to maximize yield?
Topping, I don't do that. Now, the reason I don't top is because with autoflower, you don't have any control, which means they could start flowering week 3. They could start flowering week 5 or 6. And, if you top too early, you're screwed. But if you top too late, that's not good either. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little sketchy. You know what I'm saying? So topping is out. LST is king. As far as autoflowers, LST is absolutely king. And I have 62 tops on that Skittles Autoflower. Dude, it doesn't even fit in the closet. Like it's coming out, you know what I'm saying? It makes the closet and the light look, it makes the closet look really small, but
Yeah, that one reminds me of Carmelicious I grew. It was similar to what I saw in your Skittles picture. It's just bursting out everywhere, and I actually ended up getting a half pound off of an autoflower plant before. I was
oh
pretty
yeah.
proud of that. I know some people might be watching this and might be, oh, that's it. I've gotten more than that, but I don't know what's the highest yield you've gotten off of an autoflower, and do you think that Skittles is going to be big enough to get over a half pound or what?
Uh, I got 10 O's on the Master Kush, and that was an Autoflower. 10
Oh
O's,
wow,
you know,
wow, okay, all
over
right.
half pound, you know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, it's all about training, and I love low stress training. Obviously, you're not stressing your plant out at all, so the growth is not stopped. The growth is constant going. You want to keep moving. You want to keep moving. And see, you want to form an even canopy. If you have a Christmas tree, you have the lower bud sites that could be getting the light. They're not getting the light. They're being covered up, so they're gonna become airy, like popcorn buds. You know what I mean? So I love that. I love that flat top canopy. You know what I mean? Except my Skittles looks more like a wave. You know what I mean? But that's what you want. You want an even distribution of light. That's what low stress training is to me. An even distribution of light. That's how you get all those colas. You know what I mean? I always try to challenge myself, you know what I mean? The most I had was actually 82 tops on an auto, which is like ridiculous, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot for sure. But I don't think as many people really think about the importance of the veg stage when it comes to autoflower plants. Now, like we touched upon before, it's on a limited lifespan, right? In my experience growing autoflowers, I've had plants with no stunting growth for the first 30, 40 days, and they just became huge versus, you slightly overwater and over an autoflower and veg. you see it stunt growth, or if you top it, or even sometimes transplanting. That's a controversial topic. I've tried doing that before, and I've still seen that stunt growth. Low stress training is low stress, so that's not really going to stunt the growth, if any at all. But I really feel like there's a lot of people that aren't aware of keeping the plant healthy and trying to get it as big as possible for those first 30, 40 days. Because after that, it's going into flowering, right? So,
Yeah. The problem a lot of people have is everybody tries to micromanage their grow. Oh, every day. Oh, oh, what's wrong with this leaf? What's wrong with this leaf? It's like, bro, chill out, man. Like, dude, like when you micromanage, you are going to overwater because you feel like you need to do something. You know what I mean? And that's where people screw up. Let me tell you something. This Skittles autoflower in veg, I watered twice the entire veg. Why? I go by the leaves. The plant tells you what it needs, like you don't know anything. Your plant knows everything. You feed it accordingly, you water accordingly, you know what I mean? And that's pretty much what I do.
so for that particular plant, you started in a solo cup. Do you remember what day you transplanted into that larger container? And
Um,
is it a 7 gallon or a 10 gallon?
this one is a 7 gallon.
Okay.
Um, I don't remember. Maybe 10 days. The rule of thumb that I go
Hmm.
by is once the leaves start sticking out of the perimeter of the cup, you have maybe like an extra couple of days before, you might, you don't want to get root bound. So that's when I transplant.
Do you sprinkle any mycorrhizal fungi on the roots during transplant or anything
Yes,
like
I
that?
use Mycos. I've been using that since the get-go. Actually, I started using Mycos because Cali Green, he's the guy that I first started watching, all these grow videos. Like he used Mycos, and ever since I was just like, I'm just gonna keep using Mycos all the time. So I spread that around the root ball.
I think that's one of the things that's just so beneficial that some gardeners don't use is mycorrhizae. I mean, it definitely helps with the transplant shock, reducing the chances of that because it feels like every time I use that, there's like no slow growth at all. And I think that's one thing that should be in everybody's garden is using mycorrhizal fungi.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. Here's the thing though, like when you first start growing and you look at different resources, everybody's shoving nutrients down your throat. You know what I mean? Oh, Fox Farm's the best. Oh, this brand's the best. This brand's the best. Nobody really talks about like, the microbes in. I think the most important thing for your root system to have to make your plant grow vigorously is you need oxygen and you need microbes, which equals an aerobic environment, and that's what you want.
Absolutely. So let me recap real quick before we move on to the next topic. So, for autoflowers in particular, you start off in a solo cup. Around day 10 or so, you'll transplant into a 7 gallon. Now, that 7 gallon is a mixture usually of Fox Farm, Happy Frog, and Ocean Forest. Is that right? And then from there, you're doing a top dressing with ILGM bloom nutrients, right? Those are what, dry organic nutrients?
I only do that once in a while. No, they're not. They're soluble.
Okay. So what points do you feed again? Do you do like a top dressing at a certain point?
I actually top dress with down to earth fishbone meal. And
Okay.
fishbone meal I put around maybe week 3 or 4. Now, what some people don't know is that fishbone meal
Week,
takes a little
sorry, week 3 or 4 of flour. So
flour.
you've gone 30 days and then 21 days later, roughly, so around day 50-ish is when you're doing that
Day 50, like, are you talking about?
from sprout.
Oh yeah, from Stroud. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I top dress with fishbone meal from down to earth, and what a lot of people don't understand is it's good to start that maybe a week earlier, you know what I mean, instead of like week 5, because it takes a little while for that fishbone meal to break down, to become accessible. So that's one thing I try to tell people about that. But fishbone meal is great, man. I mean, that's phosphorus right there. I think the NPK was like I think like 112.0 or something.
Got it. So it's just that for top dressing, and then you do molasses,
And my comp.
every week or so, every week or two, throughout flower, and then well up to week 6 of flower, and then recharge every week throughout the whole life.
No, just veg.
Just veg. Okay, just veg for
And
recharge.
during flower, I put in my own composting.
Oh, okay. All right. Is that around the same time, the week 3, or?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, maybe week 2, maybe week 3. I think week two is pretty good. Week two of flower. That's when I start putting in the compost tea. And what I like to use with the compost tea for anyone that's interested, I like using alfalfa meal. I like using kelp meal. I love seabird guano. Like, if you want phosphorus, seabird guano is what you need, And I use earthworm castings as well from, wiggly worm. And, of course, I use the organic blackstrap molasses and I put that all together, And I brew that for about 30 hours after I dechlor water for 24 hours. So I add that into the flour as well.
Got it. So that's your flour recipe. That was a good transition, by the way, to, to get into composting tea, which is our next avenue
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's your flour recipe for compost tea. And then do you have a separate recipe for veg compost teas?
No, actually, veg I just use recharge because it's been, just kidding.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And then I'm sorry, for your ratios, what ratios do you use for those nutrients in the compost tea or the compost?
Trying to remember. I use 2 to 4 tablespoons of the blackstrap molasses, alfalfa meal, and kelp meal. I do 1 tablespoon of that. I do 1 cup of seabird guano and 1 cup of worm castings, I believe.
Is that for a 5 gallon bucket?
5 gallon bucket, and I fill it with 3 gallons. So because if I have a 5 gallon and a 5 gallon, it's gonna be a lot of spillage. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I'm pretty good with a three because I'm using a 7 gallon pot. 3 gallons pretty good.
got it. And then how long do you let it brew for?
About 28, 36 hours.
Okay. And then do you pH adjust it at all?
Yes. After everything is done, I pH adjust it because my water is like 7.8, 8.0. So I adjust it. I like it between 6.0 to 6.4. That's where I'm getting the real optimal results.
Got it. Now, do you also dilute? Some people will dilute the tea. So they take the tea, they'll add it in with additional water. Do you do any type of diluting at all, or do you just feed it straight to the plant?
No, I don't do that. I just pour it right in.
Okay, all right. And then what equipment do you use to brew the teas?
I used a Unic Life UL 40 air pump. I think it was like 30, $40. Obviously the 5 gallon bucket, and I attach a hose from the Unic Life to to air stones, and that's how I get it bubbling up. I also think it's important. A lot of people don't really talk about this. I don't know if it really makes a difference, but I think it might. I do like to oxygenate the water. Like when I'm not having the tea, like while it's decloring for 24 hours, I just throw the air stones in there and I bubble it for that 24 hours, because I feel like there's different water out there, there's different water, different cities, the quality of water is different, and some of the waters don't have enough oxygen, even though water is H2O with a molecule of oxygen. I think it's important to oxygenate the water. I think it's just going to um, help maintain that aerobic environment for your plants.
So how often do you feed in that tea?
I feed about every 10 to 14 days. I think every 2 weeks is pretty good.
So do you check like the pH or ppm of like the soil runoff at all, or
I
just
do
kind of
not.
going in?
I
Okay.
I actually do not. I don't check the runoff. I've never had any issues.
I think on the tea side of things, when you're using organic inputs like you are, arguably you won't really need to check the pH of the runoff in
Right,
that
right.
particular case. So now, do you just use the teas as a soil drench, or do you also foliar feed using the teas?
I use the foliar spray when I have when I'm mixing in the recharge. I'll put some in a mist, like a mist spray bottle. But mostly I do a soil drench.
All right, we talked about quite a bit in this one. Actually, we hammered through this pretty quickly here. How
Yeah.
can the listeners find you, and what do you have upcoming in the future?
We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We got the Granddaddy Perp Autoflower Grow series going. We're going to be doing some live vlogs. We're going to be we're going to be making videos outside of the studio. We are actually trying to get to the 2021 Connecticut Cannabis Day over at Hartford, Connecticut. There's going to be music, bands there. There's going to be, just going to be a lot of 420 friendly stuff going on over there. So we're going to be vlogging that. We're going to try to get to more events this spring and the summer. Of course, with like COVID, it might be tough, but we're going to see what's going to be available as we push through this pandemic. But we have a lot of stuff going on this year.
Awesome. And again, for those tuning in, I will leave a link to 420 Seeds channel down in the description section below. So you guys can head on over there, give him a subscribe, give him a subscription, follow, like, all that good stuff. 420 Scene, thank you so much for sitting down with me, talking. Let me interview you and pick your brains a little bit about how you do your autoflowers, which you've been very successful on. I mean, just look at his Instagram. You can see the size of his autoflowers that he's growing, and knowing kind of the nitty-gritty details on how you do things when it comes to autoflowers, I think are going to be beneficial for those listening. So, and also the compost teas, which we talked about. And I think you just did a nutrient tea. I haven't watched it yet, or a video on the tea that you do.
Oh yeah, man. I just put out a compost tea video not too long. I think it was just a couple days ago, and I go over all the ingredients that I use for the compost tea, and I have a lot of clips on the stuff that I use, everything brewing. It's great, you know what I mean? It's going to help a lot of people out. Actually, a lot of people have been watching it. A lot of people have been thanking me for it. So I'm glad I could help everyone that needs a good compost tea recipe that's been working out for me. I want to pass it on to everyone else.
I'll link that down in the description section below as well. So if you guys want to hear more details about how he does his aerated compost teas, click that down there and check it out. Any final words?
No, I think we covered a lot today,
A lot in a short amount of time.
Absolutely.
So thanks again for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, have a good one, man.
Peace.
Peace.